Okay.
Um, Thank you for joining me.
Okay.
Um,
I just woke up not too long ago. I look kind of rough, but
well, that's okay. If you don't want to be on video, you don't have to be. Really, it's your story that I want to tell people. So it's your comfort level. You're welcome
okay.
to click back off the video and we can just have a conversation if you'd rather. I'd love for you to be on video, but if you're not comfortable with it, I'm sure not gonna make you.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
okay.
I uh
Just just
I
don't tell just don't tell me how ugly I am, okay?
I don't think you're ugly. You're a very handsome gentleman. um so this is what I would like to do is just tell your story. It's called an oral history interview. I did these in my undergrad and I really enjoyed them. And I
Uh-huh.
think it's a great way to just get people to know each other, especially when we're being accused of, being not real people or, how they're painting different people online. I thought it would be great to just tell people who we are, Um, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to join me for this. If you need a break at any point, you have complete control. If you decide you want to stop at any point, again, you have complete control. If there's anything that I ask you about that you don't want to talk about, we don't have to talk about it. We will send you this recording when we're done so you can have it for your archives and you can share it with if you have grandchildren or anyone like that that might want to look at it and see it, then that would be you can do whatever you like with it. We would like to share some of it in clips if you're open to that. But like I said, if you have control over it, we're not going to share anything that you don't want us to share. And then if you come back to us and say, "Hey, I really want to cut this part out," we can do that too. Okay?
Oh, I'm pretty open to everything, you know.
Okay.
Uh I enjoyed talking to you at the rally and you know, the short time we talked, you said you wanted to talk to me, and so I'm pretty open to anything you got want me to say.
Well, I appreciate that very much then. This is going to make that a lot easier. Um, so will you start by, you mentioned where we met. Will you go ahead and tell folks where we met and how we know each other?
Yeah, we met at the rally in Salina, Kansas, the No Kings, and I was kind of surprised at the participation, and I think it's all a good thing. You know, it's people voting uh, their rights to protest against the king, you know, or the
Yeah.
wannabe king, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess we just had a short conversation, but I went into my Vietnam experience a little bit and how it really affected my life. And it makes me really sad to see the direction the country's going into. But the Vietnam experience opened my eyes to what the government can tell you to do and what you should do to open your eyes to what is going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, sir, it does. So let's start. I'm just gonna say, so it's October 30th. It's about 10:07 in the morning. I'm Ann Parelkar, and will you give us your name, your first and last name?
Yeah, Tony Wolff, live in Brookville, Kansas, and I'm 73 years old. So I'd like to talk about anything you'd like to hear.
So when and where were you born?
I was born in Salina, Kansas, and I've lived in Brookville practically my whole life. And except I lived a couple years in Salina, in an apartment after I got back from Vietnam, and uh, pretty well been in this area my whole life.
What when's your birthday? Can I ask? I know
Yeah,
you said you're
5
73.
20 5/20 1952.
1952. My mother was also born in 1952.
Really?
Um, so what was your family when you were growing up? What were your parents together? Do you mind telling us their names?
Yeah, it was Gene and Janice Wolf, and my dad ran the local gas station, and it was also a tavern. And we didn't have too much. He kind of started from scratch in business, and my mom stayed home with us the first few years. But the tavern thing kind of ended up affecting his life, and he turned out being an alcoholic, but he recovered late in life. But he had a big influence on me as far as going into the military and serving in Vietnam. He was a World War II veteran, and he was a staunch, you know, do what you can for your country. And that's why I joined the military. But when I came out 3 years later, I had a totally different view of my service, and the experience really changed my life.
So you joined voluntarily. You wanted to go and serve, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
later years, uh, my dad and I was watching the news, and it's when the Iraq War started up. When uh, Herbert Bush started the Iraq War, and I'll never forget because we were sitting there watching the news about the Iraq War, and my dad said, "Well, if I was 40 years younger, I'd go," and I'd say, "Well, you can go in my place." And he looked at my mom and says, "What's he saying?" And she said, "I think he's saying that he wouldn't go." And he looked at me like I was from outer space, and he didn't talk to me for 2 weeks because he thought no matter what, you should go serve your country, right or wrong, the whole thing. And it was a totally different experience between him and me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, do you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, I had a sister.
Sister, is she still
Yeah.
around?
She just recently passed away from a brain tumor
Oh,
after
I'm
a
so
long,
sorry.
yeah, after a long 2 year struggle. And her and I, growing up, we weren't too close, but later in life, we were closer than we had ever been. So everything worked out good between her and I.
Was she older or younger than you?
She was 5 years older.
Did your mom work outside the home?
Yeah, in later years she did.
Okay.
She went to work in Salina at the local aircraft factory.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have any family nearby now? Did you get married or have kids or?
Yeah, my wife and I have been married since 1982, and we still live in Brookville, Kansas. And
Okay.
I'm on the city council in Brookville because
Oh, you are.
yeah, it's a good experience. I've never ran, I've always been written in, but it I feel like that it's something I should do because I grew up in this town and feel like that I should do something for the town. I mean, it's a pretty informal, Brookville's only 200 people, cats and dogs and everything included, but it's a small town, and most of the people around are farm people. And uh Brookville, growing up in Brookville, we had two grocery stores, we had two mechanic shops, we had three gas
Two
stations.
grocery stores. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
that's
and
quite a
now
lot
there's
for that
yeah,
size.
but now it's just become a bedroom community for people working Salina. We're so mobile now, and we have uh, my dad's old beer tavern is a liquor store, and then there's a place down in downtown Brookville. Oh boy, a sandstone saloon. So, and a post office, and the school's still here. But other than that, as far as businesses, there's not very much. Like I said, it's a bedroom community for Salina. I
Yeah.
worked in
How
Salina my whole life.
you did? What did you
Yeah,
do?
I was a machinist at a Phillips lighting factory making fluorescent lamps.
Oh, wow.
And it was a big factory. We made fluorescent light bulbs by the millions and billions. It'd been there since 1967, and it closed. Let's see, about 5 years ago, and
Oh, wow.
it's a different factory. But I spent 45 years there.
Wow. Were you ever a member of a union?
No, we didn't have a union.
Didn't have a union.
No,
You have any
we
thoughts
had
on unions?
yeah, we had 3 union drives, and you know, I don't know, unions have good and bad things. Most unions now are either government or utilities and stuff, but as far as private workplace trade unions have pretty well been faded out, I guess you say.
Yeah.
So you didn't have very many rights in the workplace. The first paragraph of our employee handbook said you can be fired for any reason or no reason.
Mm-hmm.
So it there was fear in the workplace.
There was. Okay.
Yeah.
You experienced that? You felt fear in the workplace for keeping your job or?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it sometimes it depended on the whims of your supervisor, whether your supervisor liked you or not. And sometimes it didn't matter how good a job you did. It was just if a lot of politics, let's say.
Understand.
Sometimes sometimes the job was easy, but the politics was daunting, to say the least.
Yeah. I always say the people that you work with can make or break the job.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you can have a
Uh,
terrible job, but great people, and it'll be better than a great job with terrible people.
oh yeah. I've made lifelong friends, from that I worked with, close friends, we worked with every day, and I value that experience. I've got some friends that are my best friends that I worked with in the workplace. We
Wow.
shared good times and bad times.
What did you do there?
I was a machinist sometimes, then depending on the whims of the market, we had good times where they added a lot of people, and then we went through a huge downsizing. I was a machinist, and then I had to go out to production. I held various positions in the plant, you know, and a lot of it was workplace, just like every place, it depended on demand and how the company was structured, and we were owned by the Dutch. Phillips was a Holland-based company.
Okay. And what about your wife? Does she work or?
Yeah, she worked for the city of Salina
Oh,
for
wow, okay.
23, 24 years.
How long have you been on the city council?
Oh, I don't know. I was on the city council, probably 15 years ago, and I was served 3 or 4 terms, and I said, well, I got other things, commitments to do, and, I wanted off. So, and I was working night shift. It was kind of tough to get to the meetings. And then later, let's see, I've been on it 2 or 3 terms. I was written in, and I served. I didn't really want to at first, but then I served and saw how you could change things and wanted input. So I guess it's with the age thing, you get more comfortable with making decisions for the city, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of funny because a small town like this, you can spend money on a new road grader and big expenses, but if the neighbor's dog is barking too loud, you have people show up to the meeting. I mean, we have some meetings where nobody comes, and then if there's a controversy, the city council's full of, you know, uh, differences, and it's kind of interesting. I can say I enjoy it.
you do. I'm glad to hear that you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
what?
so tell me about you a little bit. What makes you decide to run for Senate?
Well, I will tell you, I do want to keep this focused on you because I really want to tell your story, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me now or later. I
Okay.
decided to run for Senate. My husband's an immigrant from Mumbai. He came in 2000 and was a student. We met in about 2011 when I was in law school, and ended up getting married. And I became very interested in immigration law because of him. And so first Trump term, I was practicing. I had a solo practice, and it was very stressful to practice immigration law, and even more so this time around. It's become even more, just chaos, just complete chaos, and a lot of fear. Um, but I went out to the Oakley Town Hall with Roger Marshall. I don't know if you heard about it, but he had
Yeah.
a town hall. Yeah, okay. So, and then he left about 20 minutes in, or about 20 minutes early. And this was after he had had a 3-day retreat in Florida for his wealthy donors. And I took offense to that because I had traveled. I got up at about 3 o'clock that morning to get out there, because a lot of people from our area, I'm in Overland Park, a lot of people from our area wanted to talk to him. We had been calling him, and of course, he didn't answer or anything like that. Um, and so they wanted to go, but they couldn't, and I could. So I decided to go, and I took questions, and I took other people's questions with me. And of course, he didn't answer any or take any that he didn't want to have. And I just recognized that day that, hey, this man doesn't serve the public, he's serving himself. And I'm kind of fed up with self-serving and party servants and corporate servants and PAC servants and billionaire servants and just servants of anything but the people. I
Right.
really believe in the values that we were founded upon, where it's supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people, and I just don't think that that's what we're getting. And so I said, well, I will go and do it then. And so that's kind of when I started thinking about doing it. I had a lot of conversations after that, and didn't really get serious about it until probably the end of July when I was like, okay, I'm really going to do this. Um, but but yeah, I just feel like we don't have people there looking out for the interest of the people anymore. And I think that we need some real institutional change to ensure that these are public servants that are there. I'd like to see term limits, so that we keep, because power does corrupt, right? I mean, we're all susceptible to some level of it. Some of us are probably better at withstanding than others, but I do believe that power corrupts, and I believe that these positions are meant to be ones held by people who, like you, want to serve your community, who want to serve our country and our state, and um, not not your own interest. And I believe that you should go and serve, and then you should be ready to pass the reins on to someone else to go and serve at the
Yeah.
end of your service. You know what I mean? And so I just feel compelled to do it. I really do. It's not something that I ever dreamed of doing. I never wanted to be a politician, and I will tell you that I do not. The more that I learn about our system, the more disheartened I am by it. But I do believe in it. I believe that it's a good. I believe we have a good foundation, and I believe that if we make it what we were taught it was, then that's, and if I can help do that, then that's amazing. So
Yeah,
so
that's
that's
interesting. I think it's really sad that they don't hardly hold town hall meetings anymore because there's so much conflict,
yeah.
so much radicalism, and it just shows how unhappy people are that, excuse me, that I think money is the dominates everything, it seems
Yes, sir.
like.
I agree
And
with that.
you know, corporations and the Supreme Court seem like they're bought off, and everything's everything. Like I said, you know, serving in Vietnam, I felt like I wanted to serve my country, but I'm really sad to see the direction. I couldn't talk about when I was in Vietnam. I felt like I was doing the right thing, but when I got out, I realize that those people didn't want us there. You can go into the history of Vietnam and realize that we shouldn't have ever been there. And it seems like since Vietnam, things have gone, I don't know, seems like just worse, you know. Uh, like I said, it seems like money just dominates everything. That's my opinion.
And do you feel like before Vietnam, money did not have the, I guess, the power that it did? I mean, it's always money's always going to have some power that goes with it,
Oh yeah.
but today it seems like everything revolves around just the bottom dollar and the profit.
Oh yeah.
Before Vietnam, you felt like it was different than that?
Yeah. You know, I was younger then, didn't have as much thought about uh about the country and things. You know, everything was just seemed good, you know, uh as far as money, and it seemed like everybody had enough money. Or I mean, we always had poor, but the baby boomers were pretty dominant. It seemed like everybody had a job, you know, and things were good. But like I said, in the workplace, things started to deteriorate, and it seemed like in the last 20 years, you know, people lost rights, and just the whole big money machine seemed like it was dominant, and people were a minor distraction to the business, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like it's just getting worse.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I agree with
And
that.
and as far as the global economy, you know, we took hits at the workplaces. Oh well, you got to compete, and we suffered pay cuts, and medical insurance, you know, is a big issue, and I think it should be, because I had to battle insurance company to get treatment for some things. My daughter needed some treatment, and the doctor recommended a treatment, and we got a letter from the insurance company said, well, that's not medically necessary, so we aren't paying for it. And I'm thinking, my doctor recommended this, and some corporate uh, man in a, who knows, in a skyscraper back east wanted to save the insurance company money, so he said, well, we aren't paying for it. And that's when things, I really thought, well, how does this work? He's saving his company money, and my daughter needs medical care, and it's being turned down, but I'm paying my premiums every month. So the medical system in this country has really, oh, I don't know, it's really sad. And I personally, you know, that was in the private workplace, but I'm a veteran and I'm in the VA system now, so I have medical care. But I I feel for people that don't have the benefits that I do. You know, I consider myself lucky being a veteran, having the benefits I do, but I see things in the news, you know, like United Healthcare is, well, for example, I ran into a physical therapist the other day, and she said, well, I need a scan, but I got a letter from the insurance company said they aren't paying for it. And then
Mm.
you see the CEO of United Healthcare. Well, I asked her who her medical insurance was through, and she said United Healthcare. And then you see where the uh, CEO of United Healthcare is making what, $50 million or whatever, and uh, you know, it's like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
And Roger Marshall sure doesn't seem like he cares. I got to
Yeah,
throw that in because you know, he's part of the machine, and he doesn't seem to want people like me saying the medical care system is not working right. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I agree. I agree with you. In fact, I've spoken to doctors about this exact issue, the control that the insurance company is trying to have over our medical care and what we can get. The doctor should be the one making the decision, and the insurance should be covering it. I don't really know when this started with the insurance companies doing that. I know that it's it wasn't like that when I was younger. Um,
No.
but yeah, but I completely agree. We have got to address the power imbalance of the insurance companies and the doctors. And it's really, it feels like insurance is a scam anymore, to be honest. Like, what are you paying for if they can just say, no, we're not going to cover it? Exactly what you said. We pay our premiums every month. Our doctor suggests that we need something or orders something for us, and then the insurance company is going to tell us no, and they've never even seen us, you know? So
Well,
I,
and also it boils down to, I've called my representatives and senators and said, well, like Roger Marshall, how much money does he get from insurance companies toward his campaign? Oh, well, we can't tell you that. Oh, really? That's
you,
convenient.
you called who to ask that question?
I've asked Jerry Moran and Roger Marshall, and they
Oh,
make the
really?
comment, well, we don't cover that. You'll have to, they shove it off to someplace else. We can't tell you that,
They don't.
A-
Ah,
ask your representative, okay, how much money do you get from insurance companies to fund your campaign? And see what they tell you.
I will I will do that, and I will see if I can't find out and get you that information as well. I know it's got to be available. But that's interesting that they don't want to tell you. I'll tell you that I've received money from a lot of just normal people at this point. And it's usually small dollar donations, and that is who I want to represent. And I think that it is unconscionable that people are given the ear of our senators and our representatives based on how much money they give to them. That is not how this is supposed to work. Whether you can give me zero, or you can give me 500, or you can give me 1,000, you deserve the exact same access to me as a senator or a candidate for Senate, as everyone else. So money has no place in our campaigns and in our politics, in my
Well,
opinion.
I hope you have a chance. I really do, but you're working against the big money machine, and I hope it works out.
I am against the big money machine, and you know what will beat them is people. Um,
Right.
if all of us come together, and that's the movement that I've been seeing, and we see it at the No King's Day, and people are coming together, and people are fed up with the status quo, and people are fed up with the parties. I mean, it's
But
I don't think that the parties should have as much power as they do, as much control as they do. I think, and I love that we're having a primary this year, to get some options out there. But I would like to see, options that don't have to be a political party. I'm tired of having to choose one or the other, to be honest.
yeah,
Um,
I'm a registered independent, and
yeah.
because we need more than just two parties. And if somebody tries to get in there that is neither party, it seems like they get shut down pretty fast.
Mhm.
And
I
and
can
that's two parties that, like you say, they're in competition for the money, and it seems like that neither party is, like you, putting emphasis on the people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's got to stop. And I do believe that the people can stop it. We just have to decide we're going to.
Right.
Um, will you tell me more about will you tell me more about your time in Vietnam? Are you comfortable talking about, when you went there, what it was like?
Yeah, I I was lucky I wasn't in combat every day, but uh I like I said, I went there as a pure patriot wanting to do my duty. And after I was there a few months, I realized that uh they didn't really want us there. They wanted our money. But if you look at the history of Vietnam, they had been colonized by other countries the whole time they were a country. And the French were there before we were, and the French had rubber plantations in Vietnam, and they treated the Vietnamese like slaves, you know. And one year there was a drought, and the French were taking the Vietnamese's rice for taxes. Well, one year there was a drought, and there wasn't very much rice, but the French were still taking the rice for taxes. So the average Vietnamese person was starving in the streets. And that's when the Vietnamese people decided this has got to stop. We don't want to be colonized anymore. And they kicked the French out. You know, the final battle was Dien Bien Phu, and French was defeated. And then the United States come in saying, oh, we got to stop communism. This is going to spread communism. So we came in, and the Vietnamese didn't want us there. You know, it was divided. And that's when North and South, you know, there was North Vietnam and South Vietnam. And, uh, you know, eventually, you know, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but we lost the war, you know. And, you know, some veterans say, oh, we didn't lose the war. We won every battle. Well, we did win the battle. We had the weapons and stuff, but as far as if we didn't if we didn't lose the war, why is Saigon now called Ho Chi Minh City? Ho Chi Minh was the leader of North Vietnam. And I saw how much effort and how much blood and how much treasure was put into Vietnam. And, you know, we had permanent installations. We built roads. You got to transport the military equipment, you know, millions of dollars, and lives were lost there. And it was through arrogance, but, you know, basically arrogance. And a long time I couldn't talk about it without kind of breaking down, because it was such a sad thing, you know. And when I went there, I didn't know anything about the history of Vietnam. I think, you know, that's why the military wants young people in there, because they're willing to go in and not know anything. But when I got home, I really researched the history of Vietnam and discovered that being in Vietnam was not maybe the right thing, and that can have a devastating blow to your thought process. You know, that I went there wanting to do the right thing, and got home and researched it and found out that, well, it wasn't the right thing, you know. And you know, it's really strange because, you know, what, 50 years ago or whatever it was, we were told to go over there and fight the yellow man. But like, for example, the other day I bought some tires, and I looked on the side of them, it said made in Vietnam. You know, I thought, well, we were told to go over there and dominate them. Now we're buying shoes and tires and everything. There's a lot of stuff that's you get now. It says made in Vietnam. For example, shoes. A lot of shoes come from Vietnam. Like I said, tires for my car were made in Vietnam. And I bought something else the other day. I don't remember what it was, but it said made in Vietnam. And
Mhm.
it's the global economy. And I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying, but it's just something that happened, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. When countries just started connecting more and more and more, and yeah, the global economy just kind of arose from that, I guess. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
What was it like when you came home? I know you said you started researching and you realized that maybe the reasons that you were told you were going weren't true. Um, and I know there was a lot of animosity towards our veterans coming back from Vietnam. Did you experience any of that?
Oh yeah. I I ended up going to a counselor at the VA, and because I was, you know, suffering from depression, and the social worker at the VA told me that Vietnam veterans have a high uh, tendency to depression, because, uh, you know, like I said, I wasn't in combat every day, but I can't imagine what it must have been like to have a friend or a coworker or fellow member seeing combat every day, uh, feeling about, knowing actually somebody who lost a loved one in Vietnam and finding out, well, maybe we shouldn't have been there. What kind of a feeling that is. You know, I
Yeah.
saw some stuff in Vietnam. Like I said, I wasn't combat every day, but I saw some realistic things that uh, people getting hurt, and then you realize that they shouldn't have been. I guess is what I'm trying to say. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. When we met in Salina, it was at the No King's Day rally. Why did you decide to go to that? And have you been to other of demonstrations this year or in your history at all?
No, I've never been actively involved in something like that, but I just see the contradictions and stuff that the current administration is doing, and I just can't believe the things that are going on. Excuse me, going on. As far as I have to get a drink of water here. I'm not used to talking this much early in the morning.
Oh, that's I'm sorry. I'm making you talk a lot. I sure am.
No, no, this is good. I mean, I just feel like like you said, we got to take things back from what's going on. Look, money running everything, and it doesn't seem like anything else matters what the current king says or does. It Some people think it's all okay, you know, and I just think I was really encouraged when I got there that we were there in the afternoon, but they said in the morning there was a larger crowd, and I think as long as it's peaceful, uh, that
Sure.
it will make people realize. And I saw old people, and I saw young people, and I saw in between people. I saw black people, Hispanic people, white people, and I think that's encouraging that we all need to hang it together, you know.
United we stand, divided
Yeah,
we fall.
and I was
Um,
really happy to see somebody like you there. I wasn't aware of you until we talked, and my first impression was really good right off, and that's why when you asked me to do this, I I agreed to do it.
well, and I really appreciate it. And when we met that day, you were a little bit emotional about, when you were telling me about your service and how you did. It almost seemed like maybe you felt betrayed by your country for being sent there and then learning that maybe that was not, what you thought you were going for was not true. Is that kind of how you felt, or?
Oh, absolutely. you know
Yeah.
uh, like I said, my dad was in World War II, and that was a different thing. Hitler and Japan, they were outright slaughtering people, and you see Hitler as a fascist, and you can kind of see that parallel today. You know, they want to kill voters' rights. They want to do anything he says. Like I remember the January 6th thing in D.C. Roger Marshall didn't want to certify Biden's presidency, and I think it was a little. Trump said, "Oh, it's fraud, it's fraud, it's fraud." Well, you know, even some of his allies in front of Congress, just Lindsey Graham, for one, says we need to certify this. But Roger Marshall was kind of a holdout. He didn't want to certify a legitimate election, and that's when I started looking into his stance, and you got my vote. That's all I can say.
I appreciate that. Um, I don't know how I mean, I blocked off 3 hours for you. If I'm taking up too much of your time, you can let me know. I would like to keep going, if you're okay with that.
No, that's
Um,
fine. But
if you
something
do
else about Roger Marshall, I don't understand how a doctor who takes care of people, and he said he's delivered babies, can be for a medical system that refuses medical care. You know, uh, that seemed like quite a contradiction. I know I won't mention his name, but I had a personal doctor, and he was dissatisfied with the way money controls his practice. You
Mhm,
know, he would recommend, like I said, he recommended a test for my daughter, and the insurance company refused it. And when I called the office, they gave me a business lady, and she said, "Well, I've submitted this 3 times, and they keep refusing it." And I said, "Well, what? Why do we have to fight with insurance companies?" She said, "Mr. Wolf, that is my job at this office." She said, "I fight for medical insurance against medical insurance recommended for stuff all day long." So there's one person in the medical system that's just trying to get you medical care, and it's costing the medical care more. You got
mhm.
a person that's their job to fight insurance companies, and that's just adding to the expense of the system.
Yes, sir. I I've also heard doctors, say that they are, because doctors want to take care of people, right? Like, usually doctors go into that for a good reason, maybe not Roger Marshall, but most doctors, we've got an ER doctor on our team who's just one of the most wonderful people I've ever encountered, and just really cares about people, and very fortunate to have him with us. But yeah, I've talked to several doctors, and they're very frustrated with the system as well. And I think that, we're gonna have to talk to those doctors and see what's the best way to fix things. And I it concerns me that we seem to have, we have Congress people that go to DC, but they really don't know what's going on here. They don't really know what the experiences are here. And with people like Roger Marshall who don't want to hear from us, well, how can you represent us if you don't even know who we are? And so that's why I I want my campaign to be, and I'm using my campaign to try to talk to people across Kansas. And I do roundtables, and we'll be out your way at some point. And I hope you will join us when we do
Sure.
that. But I invite not just Democrats, I invite everybody, because I feel like we've got to get back to each other, and we've got to stop letting the internet and our politicians tell us who each other is, our politicians, our leadership should be bringing us back together and working to unite the American people. But since they aren't, we the people are going to have to do it. And so I'm doing my best to do my part to do that. Um,
Yeah, I think, like you said, uh, the Democrats and Republicans, we're so polarized. They say, well, if you want that, you're a Republican. I don't want that.
exactly.
Well, if you want that, you're a Democrat. We don't want that. It seems like that kind of blurs what people want. Well, what you say doesn't matter because you're a Republican, or what you say, it doesn't matter because you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter what the stance is. It's just, well, what party do you belong to?
That's 100% correct. And that's why a lot of times I don't lead with what party I'm running on, because I believe that politicians should be above party politics. They should be dedicated to the people, not the party. And a lot of times I've had a lot of people ask me, what party are you running as? And I will tell them, well, I don't lead with that. I don't hide it, because I'm going to
Mhm.
be honest with the people, because I believe that the people have a right to know who I am. Um, because I'm asking for this position, I'm asking them to trust me with their power that's granted to them under the Constitution, or guaranteed to them under the Constitution, granted to them by God or their creator, whoever you want to call it. Um, but I believe that we have a right to know who those people are. And so I am open to any questions that people want to ask me. And I will do my best to answer them honestly. But,
Mhm.
um,
Well,
but
let
I
me
want
ask you a
to,
question. If you wanted to run as an independent, would you have had access to anything? I mean, did you have to make a decision whether you ran as a Republican or Democrat?
I considered running as an independent. Actually, I've been registered as Republican, Democrat, none of the above. I, uh, I don't have a loyalty to a party, and I
Mhm.
don't think anyone should. Um, I did consider running as an independent, and I just recognize that there's just a 0% chance of winning this seat as an
Right.
independent right now. Um, so while I would love,
And why is that though? That's the question. Why, as an independent, did you not have a chance? Is it the money? Is it it seems like independents have been shut out. How does that happen that they're shut out?
I'm not entirely sure how the control ended up so consolidated in the two parties. I know we've had a two-party system for a long time, but I will tell you this. I spoke with the head of a party called United Kansas Party. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I spoke with them and he would be a good resource to find out kind of the history of it all. I think he's really aware of it. But he said he's in litigation to try to get fusion voting back on the ballot. They apparently it was banned in the early 1900s in Kansas, and according to Mr. Estabrook, who's the leader of United Kansas Party, um, the Republican Party actually did away with the fusion voting, and fusion voting is just where I could be listed, like if I was the Democratic candidate, I could be listed as the United Kansas Party candidate and the Democratic candidate, and I think that um, could could potentially help bring up a third party to the level to level the playing field. Um,
Mhm.
but, I think
But basically, you felt like you had to make a decision, Republican or Democrat, right?
yes, sir. I feel like I had to run on a major party ticket, it to have any chance of winning.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is, people, like, the general public, we're our elections are really important right now, especially. And so the general public, and I think it's right to feel that way, doesn't want to take away votes from the major party candidate, um, when they don't think that a third party could win or an independent could win. Um, we see a
I
lo
agree with that.
we see independents and third parties running all the time, and they just cannot get the traction. Bernie Sanders was eventually able to do it, but he did start out as a Democrat. I did research that because I thought, well, if Bernie Sanders can do it, why can't I? But he did start out as a Democrat in his early career and then became an independent.
Yeah.
Um, so my vision for it is that we get there one day, but we're just not there yet. And
Right.
if we have any hope of changing the system, we're going to have to play their game to get there. Um, and so that is, yes, that is why I ended up ultimately
Sure.
deciding to run as a Democrat.
Sure.
So you lived through a lot of major historical events, not just Vietnam, but you would have been alive when we landed on the moon. Do you remember when that happened?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about
Yeah.
that. Where were you that day, and did you get to watch it? And
I I don't remember as the moon landing as much as I remember Alan Shepard, the first astronaut being shot into space, because I don't remember, probably I'm thinking first grade or so. I remember getting up real early in the morning and watching TV, and it was hold after hold. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Right Stuff, but Alan Shepard was up in that capsule for hours, and they kept hold. Well, we got something wrong. We got something wrong. And finally he says, light this candle, get me shot. You know, he didn't, he didn't care the consequences. He wanted to go. And, you know, finally he went. And at school, you know, the first astronauts, they'd be playing the radio in class, you know, we're listening to the United States shooting a capsule into space. I remember more than I do the moon landing for some reason, maybe because I had so many other things going on, but I remember the early Mercury capsules more than I remember. And, you know, I think if you've been to the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, we just went this weekend and saw a film, but you see those first Mercury capsules they've got on display, how crude they were. I mean, they had old analog dials on them and stuff, and how cramped they were. And you definitely couldn't be claustrophobic to be sitting in that capsule on top of a rocket being shot the first time into space. You know, to me, that was the biggest part of the space thing that I remember.
Was it very exciting to watch that? How did you feel? You said you were in first grade?
Yeah, I'm, you know, don't ask me about years because time seems to, I'll say something to my wife, well, that was 10 years ago, and she'll say, 10 years ago, your timing is messed up here. I'm thinking that I was young, whatever it was, but I was sitting there watching TV, you know, and we had in Brookville, you know, you had the old antenna sticking up out of your house. And, you know, a lot of times the pictures were fuzzy. You could only get three channels, you know. I remember there's channel 12, channel 10, and 2 and 3 was out of Great Bend, but you couldn't hardly watch them. They were always snowy and fuzzy and stuff. So, you know, and now what do? You hook up to cable TV and you got 60 channels or how many channels you got. But I remember sitting there in the living room watching on a TV, you know, fuzzy picture and watching the first capsule being shot up into space. I remember that more than I remember the actual moon landing. To say, you know,
Okay.
it seems like after the Mercury and the Apollo, oh, there's the Gemini in between, you know, space was almost getting routine. It wasn't routine, but the first impression of that Mercury capsule getting shot into space was what stuck with me more, I guess.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What are some other major historical events that stand out in your mind? And I can name some and see if they, you know, jog your memory or you can just tell me.
Well, one thing I really remember, I think I was in the fourth grade, you know, it was like 1963 when our teacher got up from her desk because somebody at the door of the classroom was motioning to her, and she was out of the room for a few minutes. She walked in. Excuse me. She was really upset. She said, President Kennedy's, excuse me, President Kennedy's just been shot. And I don't remember the conversation after that, but I remember she was mad, you know, but just the way she walked in and said, President Kennedy's been shot was, I'll never forget.
Do you remember what you felt when she said that?
No, not really. Uh, but I do remember uh, the following, it was Sunday, I think. We didn't have a washer and dryer here in Brookville, so we went to the laundromat. And the laundromat had a TV in there and some chairs. And I remember uh, going over and sitting down and watching. It was when Lee Harvey Oswald was being walked out and Jack Ruby shot him. And it was on live TV. And I went over to my dad and I said, hey, that guy that shot Kennedy just got shot. And he said, what? You know, it was a live newsreel of it. And I don't remember after that what happened. I just remember that event, that Kennedy got shot, and that, our teacher walked in, she was just mad. And and then I happened to see the live action of Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot, and which raises a lot of questions with me. It I won't go into that, but you wonder, the president got shot, the guy that shot him got shot, and it's
I'd
almost
love for
like,
you to go into it if you want to.
well, I don't really remember what I thought of it, but you kind of wonder if there isn't some big, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you kind of wonder, the guy Kennedy got shot, and then the guy that shot him, so he couldn't say anything. And I was dating a gal that she wrote a thesis in her college, and it was about the Warren Commission. And her impression was the Warren Commission was just a total farce. And so,
Really?
you know, is that where the country started going amiss? And then Vietnam, and now money in politics, and it just makes you sad to see the trajectory of the country, I guess. And
Oh,
I still believe that the United States is, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the United States. I love my country, and that's why, like, I've heard Roger Marshall or some talk show host saying, well, those protesters they hate America. That's not true. You know, we love America, and we just want change, you know, and people are the
we,
ones that got to make that change.
yes, sir.
I didn't hear anybody at the protest saying they hated America. I think they were there because they wanted change, you know.
I think they're there because they love America and they're worried about America.
Right.
Um, and it's really, this is one of the reasons that I'm trying to do my roundtables and why I'm doing these interviews, because I want people to see that we're just real people and we care about our country and we're just doing the best that we can with the information that we have, and and this is across the board. Even the people that voted for Donald Trump, um, I started following some of their the pages that they follow, and I realized, well, if I believed what they believed, well, I might support him too. And so they've really, the media, social media algorithms especially, and our politicians have capitalized on it. This two realities. If you follow left-wing pages, you see certain set of information, and if you follow the right wing, you see a completely different set of information, and we don't seem to get the whole truth anywhere anymore. We only get what people want us to see that matches their storyline or their narrative or their what they want us to know. um, but when I have my roundtables and when I talk to, like that day at Salina, actually 5 kids came in a truck that was decorated with some MAGA stuff, and we love. I don't really know what it said, but I know it was like pro gun, pro something, pro Trump, something like that. But basically, they support Donald Trump, and so they came and talked to me, and I just had a conversation with them, and I said, I'm out here because I love our country, and I believe that this is what I need to do for it right now, and I told them, reach out to me, let's have more conversations like this. Because I believe that they believe that they're doing the best that they can for our country too. Now, we have extremists, and I'm very afraid that our extremists are just really loud, and so we start to think that everyone on the right is an extremist and everyone on the left is an extremist. But I will tell you that people on both the right and the left think that the other side wants to see them dead. And for most of us, that's not at all the truth. Um, And so the more that we start talking to each other and getting away from what our Facebook feed wants us to think each other is, or whoever it is that's dividing us, and I think that it's probably a whole lot of our enemies, other countries, foreign enemies, domestic enemies, just people that would see the fall of the American people. Um, they're dividing us intentionally, and it's classic divide and conquer. That's how you take over a people. That's how you do it. And we need to recognize it, and we need to set our differences aside. We need to get past our anger and our frustration with each other and realize that we're all just people trying to do the best that we can, and we're all bound by the information that we're given. Um, so
Well, that's something else that's in the news, is like immigration. And this whole problem could have been solved years ago, but
could have and should
business
have.
business wanted the cheap labor, and they're here now. We want them out. And because when I was in the military at Fort Bliss, Texas, I had a supply sergeant, and brought a German lady over that he married her, and he said, "Would you come to my place for supper and meet my wife and stuff so you can testify at her immigration interview?" And I said, "Sure." And so I went to the interview, and she had to know some American history, and she had to, uh, they asked her a lot of questions and to get her citizenship. But big businesses wanted cheap labor, and that's when the border opened up. Well,
Mm.
it should have been controlled long before this, but now we're going to use the military to solve the problem. I mean, it, it, it's it's I don't know. Like I said, it should have been controlled more in the first place, but cheap labor, they say technology is going to save us, but the worldwide search for cheap labor is controls a lot of things. We heard that in my workplace. We heard that all the time. Like I said, we was owned by the Europeans, the Dutch owned Phillips Lighting, and you know, it they we kept hearing, well, you got to compete with the Chinese. We can't give you a raise. You got to compete with Mexico. We can't give you a raise. And they cut our benefits, and our medical insurance didn't get as good. It was definitely downturn, a race to the bottom. And I think that's going on. And I can understand the anger, but I don't think Donald Trump is the solution, because I was
Agree.
just before we came on, I was reading he's in China right now, and because China has cut their soybean imports from the United States, and it's hurting farmers. So are they going to bail farmers out? But the whole thing boils down to a tariff war. You know, oh, Trump says the Chinese are cheating us, so we got to put tariffs on. Well, so the Chinese are going to other markets. Same thing with Canada. Why are we mad at Canada? I don't understand that. Canada's been our border, for years, and been an ally, and they're trading with us, and we're treating them the way we are. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, instead of starting a tariff war, it seemed like things could have been negotiated better.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I think that I think you're exactly right. I think people wanted to change, and that's why we see that that's why Donald Trump was able to win. And I'll tell you this, but for Donald Trump, I think a lot of corruption that is in our government, like I think it would have continued to be ignored. So if he's done nothing else, he has exposed that and made people like me pay more attention to all of the all of the career politicians and how they have just really enriched themselves in their their tenure as politicians and congress people. And this, um Where they can trade stocks based on you know, if they know, let's say Nvidia is going to get a contract from the government, well, they're going to go and invest in Nvidia. Well, the rest of us don't have that information. And insider trading is illegal for all of the rest of us. So why do they get to? I think we've got to ban trading altogether for Congress people. I'm not saying they can't have a 401k and have a separate investment account that they don't touch, but they should not be able to go and buy based on information that they have that the US government is going to do. That is a big part of the problem for why we've ended up with these people that won't leave office. They won't retire because they just keep making so much money. These positions, they've turned them into such lucrative jobs, and the salaries are already great salaries. And to me, um, that should be enough for you to go and serve your country. And if you want to stock trade, you can do so before and after. But when you're there, you really need to be focused on what you're doing for us. And if you want to, my other solution to that is, okay, fine. If you want to do insider trading, well, you need to forfeit your profits from that and give it over to the government and put it towards the deficit or something like that. Because really, shouldn't that be the people's money um,
Oh,
if you're
that's a
trading?
good point. That's a good point. I haven't thought about that a lot. Yeah. And the
Um,
Supreme Court, where I understand it, opened it up when they said corporations could contribute because they
mhm,
were considered private citizens. And
mhm.
but to go back to my workplace, like I said, we were owned by the Dutch. I was talking to a Dutch engineer they sent over to set up our equipment. And, there's a current thing now, cut Medicaid, cut Medicare. Oh, we can't afford it. I was talking to one of the Dutch engineers. I said, so do you have a Social Security in Holland? And he says, oh, yeah, but it's a lot better deal than what you're getting here. And then they want to cut it. You know, People are living on Social Security and their whole life they've thought it was going to be there. Now they're saying, "Oh, we can't afford that." You know,
Yeah,
what's wrong with that picture?
yeah,
You know, I my sister worked at a bank, and she told me that she said, "I don't know how some people are surviving." She was having widows coming in cashing their Social Security checks for like $600 a month. Well, how do you live on that? You know, and you want to cut that? Uh, I I just don't understand that.
yeah. And there's so many other things that I saw this morning, um, that they are, what was that article that I was, oh, I wish I had it, but that Trump is preparing to have a quick response. I forget what they called it, but he's the Pentagon has ordered that we have like the National Guard on standby in each state to respond to civil disobedience, and that's terrifying to me. Um,
Yeah, because what do you call civil disobedience?
mhm,
That's the question. Uh, is Do they consider people peacefully protesting civil disobedience, or do they consider civil disobedience somebody with a gun protesting? Where do you draw that line?
yeah,
So, you're out there holding a sign that you don't agree with the government, so the National Guard's going to come after you. Uh, to me, that's not America.
agree. I agree 100%. And we're going to have to keep going and peacefully, because peaceful revolutions have a much higher rate of success. And I don't want to see anyone hurt either. I don't want to see anyone at all hurt. I think it's, um, we need to be together on this. And if we, the people, can be together on it, we'll win. 100% will win. They can't stop the people. But we got to get our people back together, and we got to stop allowing them to divide us the way that they have been. And it's hard because sometimes I get angry when I'm talking to certain people, and sometimes they're very rude to me. But I try to find that, that one thing that we can actually have a conversation about, to get us through that kind of rude, insulting, start of something. And a lot of times I end up with a new friend at the end of it. And, we still don't agree on a lot of stuff, but we recognize, hey, we're just people trying to get through. We're all doing the best that we can. Um,
Yeah, it seems like the phrase, well, I guess we can agree to disagree, sometimes doesn't have any credence. It's just like, well, I'm going to disagree with you at all costs,
yeah.
and it turns to violence sometimes. And
Yeah.
but I was encouraged by the protest. I didn't, there's some guy that drove by in a pickup and they were yelling and screaming. I didn't really hear what they were saying, but it was obvious they didn't agree with the protest. But we were just standing there holding signs and people yelling and screaming like they were angry, you know. Uh, and I saw some signs of protest that I didn't quite agree with, but you're going to have that
Yeah,
on
there was,
both
yeah,
sides. But they didn't have a gun and they weren't yelling and screaming, you know.
yeah,
That's the whole point. When
yeah,
does when do you disagree and when does it descend into violence?
yeah. And I think a lot of it is, they've scared people are scared. Um, and I don't know what of it's where they should be scared and where they shouldn't be, but I think they've gotten us all to a place where we're a lot more afraid of um those who are different than we should be. And that's coming from someone who I grew up in a conservative family in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And I didn't realize racism was really that big of an issue until I married someone who was not white. And then I got a different perspective, And I think that just goes to show us that, none of us know what we don't know. We all kind of live our own realities, but just because we don't see things from someone else's perspective doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's maybe we just don't understand where they're coming from. And so we have to be able to have conversations again. And I think we're going to be able to. I'm really excited about it. Actually getting to meet more people, and hopefully it's a good experience. But and for the most
Well,
part, most people have been really nice.
yeah, and that right to vote. Uh, I mean, to me, it's just uh, unfathomable that women didn't used to be able to vote, and as late as the '60s, black people were denied to vote. They couldn't go into a courthouse. I mean, I remember seeing a video where a Bull Connor was standing in front of a courthouse, and any black person that wanted to come up and vote, he was telling them they couldn't vote. Actually physically barring him with police officers saying they couldn't vote. You know, everybody should have the right to vote, and
Everybody should have the right to vote.
it just seemed like we kind of seems like we want to go back to that. Do we want to deny people the right to vote or saying their vote doesn't count? Uh, so,
What would you say to people who just don't vote? They don't exercise their right to vote because
well,
they don't like the options or whatever.
I've been there.
Yeah.
That I didn't vote for years, and I guess, like I say, the Vietnam experience, and I realized how important it was to vote, and uh, that everybody should have the right to vote. And if you don't vote, well, I guess you can't complain. You know, I mean, you can complain all you want, but I think people are a little disillusioned that their vote doesn't count, and that's part of the cynicism of what's going on now. You know, I
Yeah.
vote, and sometimes I wonder, well, is it going to make any difference? But I'm going to vote, because I can say I did vote. And, you know, and I've had people say, well, how did you vote? And I say, well, that's what the privacy of the voting booth is all about. I can
Mhm.
go in there and I can vote whoever I want to. And if you ask me, well, it's not really your concern.
That's right.
It's not that I'm afraid to tell you, but I just don't want to get into a big political blowout by asking who you voted for, you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, it used to be. Go
people
ahead.
don't realize that how precious that voting booth is, that nobody else knows how you vote. You can vote your conscience. You go in there and who knows, you may change your mind at the last minute, but when you've got that ballot in front of you and you're concealed from everybody's view, you can vote your conscience.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. Actually, I've had several people tell me, people may not say they're going to vote for you or support you, because maybe maybe they're in a very red area and they don't want their colleagues or friends or family even to know. Because we do, especially today, it's so controversial. And people get so angry and hateful over who you vote for. But I think that that's huge, and I think that we should all exercise our right to keep that private if we would like to. In
Mhm.
fact, I think it might be better for us all if we start doing that again.
Yeah, I agree.
um, do you remember much about like Nixon and Watergate and all of that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you tell me about kind of your experience and thoughts on that? Like how you saw it and
Well, I was in the military, and I'm getting a lot of spam calls. Uh, I wasn't real politically involved then, but it was pretty obvious something was wrong, you know, and and I was in the military and doing a lot of different things, and I don't remember putting a lot of emphasis on what was going on. I knew it was going on, but uh, I guess it didn't make a real impression on me. But the biggest impression, I guess, was a sitting president, left. And right there, that tells you something was amiss. He
Mhm.
was doing illegal stuff, and it lets you have a little faith in the system because he did have to go.
Yeah.
He was doing the wrong things, and he did have to go. So that was a win for democracy, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think so. And maybe you don't know this, and I can obviously research it outside of that. So if you don't know, it's not a problem. Um, but do you remember how the people or even the politicians, especially the politicians who were a member of Nixon's own party, reacted? Because it seems like today, at least from my perspective, and I think yours as well, because I think you mentioned something to this effect earlier. Um, it seems to me that these politicians who are members of the current president's party just allow him to do anything, and they just kowtow to him and bow down to him. And I just wonder if there was any of that when the Watergate scandal happened and Nixon resigned, or if people were pretty pretty reasonable and could recognize, hey, this guy's got to go, we don't care what party he is.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of what is going on now is fear. I mean, they actually fear what is going on. I mean, they know that if they don't make the king happy, he's going to get you. You know, he's going to try to destroy your politics or anything. It's like I don't understand how anybody can get to serve under him, because if you don't make him happy, you're fired. How many people has he fired? I mean, you can't tell me. And a lot of them were people he appointed, you know.
Mhm.
Oh, you didn't say what I like, so you're fired. I mean, how can you have an organization, and how can you have something, a machine work, when people are in fear that if they say the wrong thing, they're going to be fired? You
Mhm.
know, how many what is it, attorneys, the what do you call the national attorneys, the how many is he
Department of
fired?
Justice. Mhm.
Yeah, and the latest one, she said something. He said, "Well, you aren't trying to prosecute my enemies enough. You may get fired." You know, well, that's just fear ruling. Everybody's scared to death of him, and he got the vote. So, and he's the president. So, uh, he doesn't care what people think. It's like, oh, you didn't say what I liked. You're fired. I don't see how you can get, or what kind of stress people are under, that, sir, I don't see how I wouldn't want to go to work for him, because if he said something and I disagreed with it, well, you're fired. Oh, end of story. I
Yeah.
don't understand how you can run something as important as a presidency by firing people that saying something you don't like. You know,
Y- the one person or the one group of people in the world who need people to disagree with them are people who sit in these positions and make these most important decisions that affect all of us. You need someone who's going to listen to people when they disagree, because there's too much at stake when you're the president of a country, and when you're a senator. And yeah, you need people that disagree. And that's another reason I have Republicans on my team, I have Democrats on my team, I have very far left people, I have middle of the road people, I have people from all walks of life on my team. And I will talk to anyone who is open to having a productive conversation with me, because they may see things from a way that I can't. And the more eyes you have on something, the better your chances at making sure you're doing everything right, making sure you're making the right decisions. So it's really scary to have a guy who just surrounds himself with yes men all the time, running a whole country. That's a good point that you
yeah,
made there.
yeah. I don't understand if you were asked, well, do you want to be one of my people, and you want to say yes. I can't I can't understand why you would want to put yourself in that position.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I
like I
agree.
said, it's fear. You know, uh, if you don't say what he likes, he's going to go after your throat.
Mhm.
And
It's very Kim Jong-un of him.
yeah,
Um, it's really scary. And I'm very concerned that he's buddying up so much to demagogues, and our longtime enemies, and isolating us from our allies. He's really, from my point of view, putting the United States at great risk with a lot of the things that he's doing. And it just doesn't seem to me that he's working for the American people at all. Um,
yeah. And as far as radicalism, this is a little something I got to throw in. I have seen, when Biden was president, whether you liked him or not, people that hang banners in front of their house, huge banners with the term, F you,
mhm.
Biden.
F
And
Joe Biden.
I had a neighbor that, his neighbor put up a big banner across his front porch that said, F Biden. And his wife called and complained to the police and said, well, we can't make him take it down. But she says, well, we got school kids going to school,
Mm,
walking by this big banner that says, you know, F Biden. Is that appropriate? I wouldn't, as much as I don't like somebody, I wouldn't hang a big banner on my front porch saying that, you know, uh, Mommy, I was going to school and there's this big sign that says, you know, F Biden, what's that mean? You know, it's like, I've never, I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but, and I was driving through a small town and saw the same banner, you know, and it's like, I wouldn't think about hanging a sign in front of my house that says F, F Trump, you know. It's just,
Yeah, yeah. I
I
would
mean,
never think of doing that.
yeah,
Um,
it's just, uh, you can fly a Trump flag, okay, you can fly a Biden flag, or you can fly a Obama flag or whatever flag, but don't, you know, say things that are going to make kids go home to their family and say, "What's that mean?" You know, what's
yeah,
that what's that F word mean? You know,
yeah,
uh, it. I mean, that's pretty radical. Uh, I've seen I've seen a black flag of the United States hanging upside down, and you know, that should really affect a veteran. You know, uh, that even if you didn't disagree with your country, to hang a upside down black flag, you know, that's really disrespecting that flag. Whether
yeah,
whether Vietnam was right or wrong, you know, that American flag still stands for a country and what it's done, you know.
yeah.
And I saw a lot of American flags at the protest, you know. Uh,
Mhm.
so, you know, when I hear that those protesters don't love America, to me that doesn't ring true at all.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Um, do you need a break? Are you still good?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I would like to, and I want to make sure I was going to ask you this at the end, but I want to go ahead and ask you, um, because we've talked a lot about what's going on today and kind of your thoughts on it. What message would you give to young American men and women who are considering signing up to join this kind of national police force? Or the military when he's planning on sending the military into our own communities, and he already has sent the military into some of our communities across the country. What message do you have for any of the young people who are already in the military or thinking of joining immigration enforcement or any of those things where they're going to be deployed in our own streets? Do you have any messages for them?
Well, yeah, I kind of wonder what the people that are being deployed, like the immigration agents, the police, and even the military that are out there pushing the crowds around, are they are they comfortable with that, or are they doing, you know, when you're in the military, you do what you're told, you know, and I kind of wonder what the thoughts are of some of them. Do they actually think that the people they're pushing around or tear gassing, do they actually think all these people are rabble that don't deserve to be out on the street? Or do they have a conscience about it, but they're doing it because they're told to? You know, they've got that uniform on, and when you got the uniform on, you do what you're told, you know. And I just wonder what some of their thoughts are. You know, I saw some say, I don't know if it's really attributed to anybody, but saying, I didn't sign up for this, you know, and I kind of wonder, I didn't sign up for crowd control and to push people around and tear gas the citizen. I kind of wonder what the thoughts are of the people on the ground that are having to do this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a question in my mind. If I was in that position, would I feel comfortable with tear gassing protesters? You know, it's different if the protester throws a rock at you, you know, but if they're peaceful, would you feel good about throwing tear gas at them? You know, And I can understand, if they're blocking business from going on and stuff. But where do you draw that line? That there again, where do you draw that line? And if you're the guy in that uniform out there, how do you feel about this?
Yeah. When we were in Salina, there was another veteran that walked up to me and he said, if our military members are asked to do something that is against the Constitution, then they can refuse those orders. Is that your understanding?
Yes, and maybe this is a little off the subject, but the subject come up about General Milley that
Hmm.
was the general during the January 6th insurrection. He Some people said, well, he talked to the Chinese. They put on some of the news, well, he talked to the Chinese. Well, if you read the book about the situation, yeah, he talked to the Chinese because he was trying to calm them down. Because the head of the Chinese military called General Milley and says, hey, what's going on over there? Are you having a revolution? Because, they watch us like Tiananmen Square. It was on all the news and we were watching them. And you can bet they were watching us when the January 6th thing happened. And General Milley was trying to calm them down. Well, democracy's kind of messy and this will pass. But the Chinese were thinking, what the heck is going on in the United States? You know, they've got an insurrection there. And
Yeah.
so that kind of got distorted as far as the news that, oh, he talked to the Chinese. I even saw a picture of General Milley with a Russian hat on with a red star, saying he was a traitor, or a Chinese hat with a red star on it. Well, if you look at him, he has ribbons on his shoulder, and one of them is a combat infantry badge. And if you know the military, a combat infantry badge, meaning you were in the military and you were in the battle and you got shot at. You didn't get out of the military because you had heel spurs. You were you had that badge on your chest because you were shot at in a battle. And I would trust somebody like that a lot more than somebody that had heel spurs to get out of it. And that's what I don't understand about some veterans. And one of the I didn't like some of John McCain's politics, but he got shot down doing bombing runs over Vietnam and he was a prisoner of war. And I read about when he was prisoner of war that he was in a room with like five other prisoners and they caught a rat and they divided up that rat and they ate it raw because they were hungry, you know. And when he died, Trump didn't want to lower the flags to half mast. His advisors were surrounding him, says, you got to do this. And well, Trump didn't like John McCain. And they finally talked him into it. 2 or 3 days later, he finally said, okay, lower the flags to half mast, but it was personal. You know,
Mm.
he didn't respect John McCain's service, but he just didn't like him, and
Right.
that was
Because
a,
John McCain would stand up to him.
yeah, exactly. And if you
Yeah.
do that, like I say, if you stand up to him, you know, John McCain didn't have the fear that other people have. Some of these politicians, oh, if I say anything about him, I'm going to get, you know, I'm going to be on national news and Trump's going to be trashing me, you know. And, but that was another kind of a experience that I noticed that something's wrong here. And there was propaganda put out that against John McCain that wasn't true that I researched, and I won't go into all that, but uh, it just shows you how polarized. I think people need to, instead of listening to things and taking it for, they need to research and find out what the facts are, I guess. And to be fair, some people don't have the time. Maybe they're out making a living, doing everything they can, and they don't have time to, but they hear something on the radio. Oh, yeah, you know, because they're too busy making a living, or they don't care to research what is actually happening.
Right. Well, and they've sown so much distrust, that it's really hard to know you know, where to find, um, the whole truth anymore. They all kind of spin everything to suit their own needs or their own agenda, and they don't just give us full information if it makes them uncomfortable. Um, and of course, some of them are intentionally lying to us and misleading us, and intentionally sowing this distrust. And I've got my opinions about who's doing that and who's the worst there. But the point is, um, we got to stop letting them tell us who each other are, and we got to start talking to each other again, because once you have a conversation and then you bring in both points of views, then you can see, well, okay, well, where's the truth really? Usually it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe further one side than the other, but usually it's somewhere in the middle when two sides are angry at each other or fighting or whatever. But we the people, you and me, our friends, our neighbors, we've got to talk to each other and figure out what's what. And then we've got to get people that we can trust in these positions, people who, even if it's going to hurt their chances in their next campaign or not get them elected, they're going to still be honest with us. And that's part of what I hope to do is even if I don't win, just be honest with people and reset the standard for where we elect people that we can trust, that have our interests at heart, that aren't working for themselves, that aren't lying to us when it makes them look good or when it makes them uncomfortable to tell us the truth. Um, we've got to get honest people back in there, and we've got to make it safe for honest people to run, because I will tell you that um, it's not they've turned it into a very not great experience to run for office. And I love meeting people and getting to talk to people, and this is I absolutely love this. Um but um but they make it so expensive to run. There's so much money involved, and there shouldn't be. Every candidate should have the exact same amount of money to spend to get their message out. We should go to the people, tell them, this is who I am, this is what I can offer you. Let the people ask questions, and then let the people decide who's best. We should not be trashing our opponents. Now, if there's something about your opponent that the people really need to know, well, yeah, we need to bring that out, and the people deserve to know it. But for the most part, you should really be talking about yourself and what you're going to do for the people, not trashing your opponent. And I think that's the reason a lot of people don't want to run, is because they're scared of what's going to come out, and how they're going to be treated, and whatever else. And I don't blame them. But if we can stop that, we'll start having normal people run for office again, good people, people that are going for the right reasons, and people that we can trust. And I think that's how we get through it.
I
Um,
agree.
do you did you go to college?
Excuse me.
Did you go to college after the military, or did you?
I took a semester, but
Yeah.
uh, I, I went to Marymount here in Salina, but college just wasn't for me. Uh, a different time in my life, and I wanted to do other things. I thought later that if I was to choose a career in the college field, it would be to be a social worker or something like that. Uh, and now you think I've been in the hospital a couple times. Well, I'm 73 years old, so I've been in the hospital a couple times, and the things they do in the hospitals are just, I mean, you see all the technology and what they can do. And I worked at Phillips, we had 12-hour shifts. It was all on concrete. So I had a bad knee. So I went in and had a knee replacement. It's like, holy crap, they can put you in a new knee, you know? And I had to go to the emergency room, a couple years ago, and I saw everybody in the hospital, uh, you know, trying to do their best. I mean, I didn't see anybody goofing off at the hospital. They were all moving, working, had jobs, and it really respects the medical system. And sure, it's expensive, but what they can do is, I mean, 60 years ago, if you had a bad knee, I guess you just had to suffer with it because they couldn't replace it. Now they can replace joints, they can do heart procedures, and all that takes technology and take money, but people should have access to it. It should be reasonable enough without, I mean, what would the medical system be like if you took out the insurance companies? They're making billions and billions of dollars, and if everybody could get medical care and have access to that technology, I can't imagine denying somebody a procedure because, well, that's not paid for. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people say, oh, well, there's lazy people out there that don't deserve medical care. Well, most of the people I know are working and contributing to society, and sometimes they can't get medical care. That's not right. but
It
but but
seems
going back to what the hospitals can do is just amazing. The technology that's there, it's just mind-boggling that they can replace a joint. My wife's brother had a torn aorta. They put him in the hospital, and that was 2 months ago, and he's back.
wow.
Imagine that. you know
It's it, it is amazing what they can do. It really, really is. Um, I I have a lot of concerns about the healthcare, especially for rural Kansas. I've met with, like I said, I have an ER doctor on my team, and I met with a hospital administrator a few weeks ago, and I learned that Kansas has, I think, about 30 hospitals that are at imminent risk of closing. So they're probably almost certainly going to close. And then we have
Absolutely.
a total of 60 that are likely to close. I think it was a little more than 60, but around 60 that are very likely to close. And, these doctors pointed out that that's not just going to impact rural Kansas, because now rural Kansas is going to have an even harder time getting health care. Um, but the cities, the urban areas, are not equipped to absorb the amount of people they're going to need to absorb because of these closures. And so it's going to impact healthcare for everyone across all of Kansas. And, we already have healthcare deserts in Kansas. We have places where there's no maternity care at all. And so you have to travel for that. And I know when I was in Pratt earlier this year, I learned about a guy who had to be helicoptered out to one of the bigger cities after he had a heart attack. And my first thought is, well, if you can survive that, because a heart attack, you don't know how much time you'll have. Um, but if you survive that, how in the world are you going to pay for that? And I just, it's not sustainable. We can't continue on like this. We have to come up with real solutions. And if you ask me, Mr. Wolff, my opinion of it is, if you are an individual who works a full-time job, a 40-hour-a-week job, then you deserve some basic level of existence because you're putting in those 40 hours. You deserve food to feed your family. You deserve shelter. You deserve the basic utilities, water, and you deserve to be able to get health care. And to your I know some people will, well, there's lazy people. Okay, well, they're not going to work those 40 hours and they won't have that basic level of of needs met. And should people be able to work more and earn more to get luxuries? Yeah, absolutely. Let them do it. I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with CEOs making millions of dollars a year and their employees having to apply for food stamps. In my opinion, we're supplementing big corporations when we pick up the tab for where they lack in their employee pay and their employee reimbursement.
I know exactly where you're coming from. I've had that discussion, and
Yeah,
like you say, if somebody's working a job 40 hours, and the minimum wage is 7.25 an hour, who could survive on that?
nobody.
7.25. If you're making 7.25 an hour, you probably can't contribute to a 401k. You probably can't buy medical insurance. You probably will have nothing. You
Yeah.
know.
You will, I don't think it's possible unless you'd have to have some sort of communal living to have even shelter with that. There's no way anyone can do that. And I spoke with one fella who, there's a lot of suggestion when you talk about raising minimum wage. There's a lot of argument that, well, then prices will go up. But my counter to that is, well, prices are going up and they have continued to go up and they've not stopped going up, and yet we haven't increased pay at all. So that doesn't seem to be the connection there. I would really like to see somehow we tie the CEO reimbursement to the lowest paid employee so that that CEO then has an interest in making sure his employees are paid, because then he can't make as much money as he wants, unless that lowest paid employee makes a certain amount. Um,
Yeah, maybe we ought to put Congress on minimum wage. Oh, that's kind
maybe
of
we
radical.
should. I do believe that they should um, have to forfeit their salary when they're shut down. I mean, they're not going to feel. Some of them are refusing to take the salary. They're deferring their salary in solidarity with our federal workers, but they're not going to feel that impact. I have friends who are federal workers who, they're on day 30 with no pay. And they don't know if they're going to be able to feed their families if we don't get the government back up and running and get them their paychecks. And Congress wants to demonstrate that they're in solidarity with them by deferring their salary, but they're not going to wonder if they're going. Congress people don't wonder if they're how they're going to feed their families next week, or if they're going to be able to fill their gas tank and get where they need to go. And so I said, well, they need to donate that salary to charitable causes that are helping out our federal workers that are not getting the pay and are feeling the impact of that. And someone else said they can also donate their time since the government shut down. And I think that that's a great thing to do too. Um, but you're right. They need to understand what the American people are going through, and they can't do that because they have everything covered. Their health care is great because they gave themselves great health care. Um, why do the rest of us not deserve that?
Well, and to go back to that, I had a uh, insurance problem where the insurance prob wasn't going to pay for a procedure, and I called Jerry Moran's office and got one of his spokesmen, and I told him the situation, and they said, "Okay, we'll see what we can do." And this was after months. My medical care said, the doctor said, "Well, we haven't received a payment yet. We haven't received a payment." This went on 3 or 4 months. And I said, "Well, do you want me to give you some money out of my pocket to satisfy you until we see if the insurance?" "No, we'll wait." And that's when I called Jerry Moran's office. And the spokesman said, "Okay." Well, about 2 weeks later, the doctor's office said, "Oh, your insurance company paid for it." But why did I have to go to, and I called Jerry Moran's office and said to a spokesman, I said, "Did Jerry Moran do something to make them come around to pay that?" And they said, "Well, I don't know. We gave that information to him. Whether it happened or not, why did I have to go to such lengths to do that? And the same thing happened in my workplace. I had a medical procedure the insurance company wasn't paying for it. And I talked to the plant manager and I said, hey, I got this medical bill. What's the deal? Medical insurance won't pay for it. So he said, well, go to personnel. And the personnel man called the insurance company and says, I've got an employee here that the insurance company isn't paying his bills. And he talked to a spokesman from the insurance company, and the insurance company says, well, what do you want? He said, pay the bill. And it was paid. But, I had to go through hoops to get them to pay for that. Why is that? A lot of people wouldn't have, wouldn't have went to the plant manager. A lot of people wouldn't have went to their representative. They would just excuse my language, well, I'm screwed. I guess I got to pay it. Why do you have to fight for it?
I agree. I
Uh,
agree 100%.
but that's why I've been, outspoken about the medical care, because I've lived it,
Mhm.
and something else was, my company was what's called self-insured. So I called the state insurance commissioner. And they said, oh, well, we can't help you. Big corporations have been exempted from state law, so we can't help you. And that's called a company is self-insured. That's a way for them to get around the law, and state law doesn't apply.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know about
Oh yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I wrote a letter to the state senator, Pete Brungart, if you want me to mention his names. And I said, what's the deal? I called state insurance commissioner. He says, well, unfortunately, big corporations have a loophole that says they're self-insured. They buy their own insurance for their employees, and the states can't enforce it. So you didn't know that? A lot of people don't.
I didn't know that. That's they're so good at finding ways to screw people over.
Yeah.
They're very good at that. Um, how many kids
And
do you have?
I had one daughter.
One daughter. Okay.
Yeah.
Where is she now?
She's down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And there again, she's working 3 jobs. It upsets me when I hear people say, well, young people don't want to work. Well, she's working 3 jobs.
She
She's a
works.
reporter for a newspaper. She writes for a Kansas magazine, and she works at Bath and Body Works. And,
Oh wow.
you know, uh, but I, you know, I don't want to hear that young people don't want to work. I see a lot of young people working their hearts out, and they
Yeah.
aren't getting anywhere. How do they afford $1,000 a month rent? You know, when you're working for $10 an hour, how do you accumulate it? That's something, when I got out of the military, you could just about go anywhere and get a job, and you could pay your rent, you could buy a vehicle, you had insurance, and you was okay, you know. And but now it seems like it's harder to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. So she works 3 jobs. Can I ask how old she is?
She's 40.
40. Okay. Has she worked this many jobs for a long time or?
Uh, yeah, she's worked retail. You know, she hasn't. Uh, she doesn't. It hasn't been a college graduate and been, making big money. But she's always worked. And like you say, somebody that works should have the basic rights to health care, housing, put food on the table, and
Yeah.
uh,
And you shouldn't
anybody.
have to work 3 jobs to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
One job should meet those needs and the extra 2 jobs should be for extras.
correct.
Um, if that's what you want. Yeah, I agree. It's not sustainable. We've taken we've taken away from our people, and we've put importance on corporations and billionaires, and it's just unconscionable. And we're going to have to do something about it. Now, I think maybe some new antitrust laws are going to be in order to address some of these things. You know, we busted up monopolies before, so I don't know why we can't do it again. It's just we're going to have to get in there and do it. So,
Yeah, I remember, he was talking about CEO pay. I remember reading that the average CEO makes like 350 times what the average worker makes at their company. And I remember reading about Japan, and don't quote I don't remember the exact numbers, but in Japan, the average CEO makes like 50 times what the average worker makes. Why do we have such a lopsided equation that
yeah.
that CEO gets millions of dollars, gets tax breaks, gets golden parachutes, and if they do something wrong, they still get bailed out? I mean, that's what gets me. They say, well, the CEO got to get paid all this money because he knows what's going on. Okay, well, a company goes bankrupt because the CEO didn't do the right thing, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that was going on," and he gets out of
Hmm.
it. He gets some golden parachute. He retires with, millions of dollars a year, and everything's paid for. That's it bothers me when I say, well, there's a lot of companies that have corruption. Well, isn't that the definition of corruption? When a CEO is making millions of dollars and maybe his workers can't afford to live, you know, what is that?
To me, it's inherently evil. I think if there's evil in the world, that's it. To hoard the world's resources. You know, we saw, and I don't know if you're religious at all, but I was raised Presbyterian, and I'm a Christian. I still go Presbyterian church. Um, and I remember, you know, the story of Moses when he led his people away from Egypt, and you know they were there was manna from heaven, and there was enough for everyone. And you know, I think that demonstrates that we have enough in this world for everyone. And so if, you know, if Moses had said, well, this is all my food, well, Moses is now not a very good person, right?
Hmm.
Because so to me, you know, it's inherently evil, and I don't mind people working harder and making more money, and move. I love actually the idea of a society where people can start off in one sort of, you know, I don't want to say class, but class, socioeconomic class, and they can move from it. They can move up. But we've made that impossible. There's no upward mobility in society anymore. There's a lot of downward mobility because things are just getting more and more expensive, and pay is not keeping up with it. And money is just consolidating more and more into these few individuals. And to me, to have that much wealth when there are starving children and children without water, to me, it's inherently evil. But that's maybe too deep, but that's my personal opinion on that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Do you know where your ancestors came from and when they came to the United States?
Uh, no, not really. That's something I haven't gone into, as far as I've gone back to as grandparents. And it's funny. This is a story I can tell. My dad, he grew up during the Depression, you know, and he said they had a they lived in Dubuque, Iowa, and he said they had a summer home, a separate summer home on the Mississippi River where they'd go during the summer. And he said they had a big Lincoln car with a V12 engine, and he said they really lived good. They had like 9 kids. And I
Wow.
said, "Well, Dad, how did how did your dad afford that in the middle of a depression?" He said, "Well, he was a bootlegger that didn't get caught." So, that goes back to what were they thinking when they made prohibition and alcohol totally illegal and it created the mafia, you know,
Yeah.
uh, that was a time when things went wrong, you know. But that I don't know if that's interesting or not, but it was interesting to me. I said,
It's
Dad,
very
how did
interesting.
he afford that? He's a
That's
bootlegger
really
that didn't
funny.
get caught. Yeah.
What did he do besides that then? Do you know what he did for work outside of that?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Oh, well,
Uh,
maybe he didn't have to because that
yeah,
was lucrative. So
yeah. I remember one of the only family vacations we took. We drove from here to Dubuque, Iowa to see him, and his dad. They lived in a nice house, and it was a nice neighborhood and everything. And I don't know if he was living off that money or what,
Yeah,
but
okay. Well, that's really interesting. Very cool. Have you ever
yeah,
you've never dabbled in the bootlegging industry?
no, not lately.
That's really funny. Um, what else? Is there anything else that you want to tell me about, or any other either current events or past events that you want to talk about, or parts of your life that are interesting that you could share with us?
Oh, I'm retired and uh, I feel lucky I have what I've got, and but I want other people to be able to have what I have, you know. Uh, I guess I've always had a job. I've never not worked, you know. Uh, a few minor layoffs and stuff like that, but I've always worked ever since I was 13 years old mowing lawns, and I'm just really enjoying getting up in the morning, not having to go to work, and I'm 73 years old. I worked till I was 67 so I could get almost maximum Social Security. And I think people that work their whole lives deserve, you know, to uh, have some free time. I mean, I work 12-hour shifts, and sometimes we'd have to work overtime and, work 60 hours a week, 65 hours a week, and to keep the factory going, and I just would like to see everybody have that opportunity and and when they're working, have medical care, you know, and be able to afford it. So,
Yeah.
uh, I just think if you work for, like you say, if you work for a living, you should get the basic things. I mean, I don't have a lot of money, but I can do what I want, and don't have to worry about putting food on the table or paying the utilities. And like I said, I'm a veteran, so I've got good medical care between Social Security and medical care. Veteran, I don't have to worry about medical care. So, but I think people that if they're working a job and they get disabled, they should be able to still have basic rights to keep a roof over their head and have opportunities
Yeah.
and not wake up stressed every day where they can. I don't know. I don't understand how some people are getting by with what they're doing. A
Yeah.
lot of people are doing good, and that's good. But some people, it seems like things are pretty lopsided, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
that's where a lot of the anger is coming from. But I
so
don't
when
think.
you
Oh, go ahead.
did your wife work as well, or did she stay home?
Yeah, no, she stayed home for a while until my daughter was, I don't know, like first grade, and then she went to work also.
Okay. What now did you what was your do you remember what your paycheck was like when you were working at the factory?
Oh, it varied a lot, you know. But I do remember when I started at the factory, uh, that we got cost of living raises, and you didn't have to worry about medical care. It was pretty well paid for. But later, I'll say this, the first 20 years was pretty good. And the second 20 years, we saw a lot of cuts, you know, oh, you got to compete, worldwide competition, and we got to cut this and we got to cut that, and like I said, a race to the bottom, you know, and like I said, I think that's where a lot of the anger is,
Mhm.
when you're doing okay and then you got to take a hit, it affects you, you know.
Mhm. When
So
you did you buy a house when you came back from Vietnam, or did you rent, or
yeah,
did you move back
I,
home, or
I bought an extreme fixer upper.
yeah?
I lived in a mobile home. I bought a mobile home, and my dad had an empty lot, and he said, "Well, if you want to put something on there," so I bought a mobile home, lived in that, and I was free and single, and had a mobile home, and I had a motorcycle, and I had a car, and was having a good time, and then I found an extreme fixer upper here in Brookville that I'm still living in, and I've worked on it and worked on it, and uh, I bought some mobile homes on lots and had rentals, and I had the extra money to do that, and recently sold all the rentals because I just got, I was working all the time, and I was doing that while I was working full time, working on rentals, putting them in, doing all this kind of stuff, and I uh, I can truthfully say I worked my whole life, and that's why I just like getting up in the morning. If I don't have the money to jet off on a plane to go to Europe, that's okay, you know. But I just happy to like I got up this morning, and if I would have known I was going to be on video, I would have been prepared and groomed a little better. But but I after this interview is over, I'll go out to my garage and tinker with my motorcycle. I got an antique motorcycle, and I got the freedom to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
So I feel lucky, but
yeah. I mean, I think most of us are happy with just enough, Most of us are. Um yeah, my husband would like to say hi. Is that okay?
yeah.
He's a motorcycle man.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I was taking a break from my work, so I heard motorcycle. I had to ask Ann, can I? So what motorcycle do you have?
I've got a 1986 BMW,
Which model?
an R80. That's 800 cc.
R80.
Yep.
So I have a Honda Valkyrie. I'm sure
Oh,
you've, but it's a 2015 model. My dream bike would be to get the K1600,
yeah.
the GTL. But
I
Ann
also
won't
have,
ride with me.
well, uh, I've had to be truthful with you. I will be the first to admit motorcycles are dangerous.
Oh,
You got to,
yes.
Thank you.
especially,
Oh,
especially in today's traffic. You know,
my kids
uh,
are not even going to smell a motorcycle. They let
I,
alone sit on one.
I've said this that if I had a son and he said, "Dad, I want a motorcycle,"
Oh,
it'd scare the hell out of me because I've thought about the crazy things I used to do on a motorcycle when I was young. And no, son, you can't have a motorcycle.
nope. My son will not ever have a motorcycle. I am completely on board with you. They are crazy instruments.
I'll
All
bet
right,
that makes
I'll let you continue with Anne.
okay. Bye. I think
Nice to meet you.
that makes Anne happy too, huh? But
Yeah, she doesn't let me ride. She tells me, okay, you can go in she tells me you're only allowed to go ride in the cul-de-sac that's opposite the house, and that's about it.
yeah, yeah. I ride mine in the country or on the highway. I just went to Salina a couple days ago, and I got the heck out of Salina. In traffic, motorcycles aren't
Oh
good.
my God. Yeah, no, no. People don't see you, and
So much
it's
road
just
rage these days
that's the
too that
problem. The road rage has gotten worse. So
Yeah, and being a mechanic and a machinist, I've
Mhm.
spent hours working on mine. When I bought it, it was really rough, and I spent hours working on. I've worked on it and tinkered on it a whole lot more than I've ridden it, but I enjoy that.
So you have
you
your
know.
own lathe and stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you're so when
Oh, did you say?
Armageddon hits,
Oh,
we
did
have
you
to go
say
to his
lathe?
place.
Got it.
Did you
Yeah,
say lathe? No, I don't
yeah,
have any machine shop equipment, but I have basic mechanic tools,
basic. Yeah, yeah,
that I
yeah.
work on. I've got
Your
a friend that,
grinders and the stuff.
yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
I, I get out to my garage and tinker on it, and I'm a happy man.
Yeah, when I retire, I'm gonna build my HO scale train track that I'm collecting right now for the next. I have been for the past 20 years, and I'm going to keep collecting. That's my retirement hobby.
Yeah. I go out to my garage and I'm out there for hours and I come back in and my wife and I agree we like to have our alone time together. And I come in and after being out in the garage hours, I say, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." "Okay." I go back, you know. But
Oh,
I'm
that's
a,
so cute.
That's the best life to have. And
yeah,
I was here a little bit earlier. I agree with your comment that the next generation, unfortunately, doesn't look like they're gonna have it if things continue the way they are.
yep.
Yep. Anyways, I will take my leave. I have to get back on the clock because I'm getting
Okay.
paid. So
Okay. Thank you.
nice to meet you.
Yep.
Um, so that's my husband, Nikhil. He's a scientist. He does cancer research.
Oh,
Um, yeah, he's really smart. Um,
oh, there's people that don't believe in science either.
Yes, I know. And I understand some of the, I think it's good to question, but then you have to accept the answers that are there, right? Like you can question, and I ask my doctor questions, but then I trust my doctor's answers because the doctor certainly knows better than I do about things. So yeah, but it's
Well, that's excuse me for interrupting, but an
no.
example is a pandemic. You know, uh, I got my vaccinations through the Veterans Administration, and I know people that were totally against that. Well, I know four people that I retired with that retired about the same time. They got the they got the COVID and they're dead.
Oh wow, really?
And and I don't know. I believed in the vaccine and I got them. And I guess people have the right not to get it, but some paid the price. And it seemed like the COVID had a lot of difference. Like I think I've always had a good immune system. I read an article that people with a positive blood type has a better immune system and we're more resistant. I think that's true because I'm an O positive, and we got the vaccinations. I got three or four of them, and I did get the COVID, but it was really mild. My wife and I both had the same time, and we kind of moped around the house for a week, and then we were okay, you know. But I know some people got the COVID and they went to hospital and they died. It
Yeah.
all depends. It goes back to everybody's different.
Mhm.
And
It was a
I know one guy that he was an anti-vaxxer, and his son died from the COVID because his
oh
son didn't
no.
get the vaccination, and he's really questioning his thoughts.
Yeah. It's really a shame. And I know people that were against it, and my husband's a scientist and he told me to take it, so I took it. Um so I'm fortunate to have someone that's so close to me that I can trust completely, that can advise me that way. But a lot of people don't have that, and they just have to rely on, you know, people that they don't know as well, that maybe they don't have their best interest at heart in their opinion. Um, but it's really, really sad. COVID really messed up a lot, and I think that time that we were all separated hurt us nationally, as a people too. I think that served I think that had a big hand in the division that we're seeing now. And we got to get back. We got to get back to each other.
I think what convinced me was about 10 years before this pandemic. I'm a reader, and I stopped at a bookstore, and there was a book called The Great Influenza, and it was about the pandemic in 1918. And a lot of people, I don't know, have you ever read or researched the pandemic in 1918?
I haven't studied it a lot. I know a little bit about it, but please continue.
Oh, thousands of people died. I mean, they had, that was back in the horse-drawn days. Horse-drawn wagons were going through big cities saying, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. And people were putting their dead relatives on the front porch to put on the wagon, and mass graves. And I read that book and I thought, holy crap. And when this pandemic, the COVID first started, I thought, uh-oh, here we go. You know, uh, because if you get a chance, read about the 1918 pandemic. And the ironic thing was, they think it started in Kansas.
I did hear that. I did, yeah. And then they called it the
Yeah,
Spanish flu, right?
yeah, yeah. And but I read that book, and like I said, when the pandemic here, COVID thing first started, I thought, uh-oh. And that's what convinced me to get the vaccination. I thought, back in 1918, they didn't have vaccinations. They say they got it now. I'm going to go for it.
Um, I think we're seeing, why history is such an important thing to learn, because like you said, I was a history major and I've studied a lot of history, and I'm just kind of, I enjoy learning history. And so a lot of historians are on edge right now and concerned about the direction of our country because of our study of history. And so just like you said, you could recognize the similarities between then and now and said, well, I've got the opportunity to do something about it, and then you did. And so I think that's a big deal that that you mentioned that, because it's learning our history is really important, um,
Yep,
so that we
I
don't
agree.
repeat it, so that we
Yep.
can learn from it.
I,
Um, Go ahead. Did you do you remember how much your house cost when you bought it?
$10,500.
Oh wow.
Like I said,
So
it was an extreme fixer-upper.
what were you able, did it take you some time to pay it off, or?
No, no, I got, I bought it, the owner of the house, I bought it from him on escrow, meaning made the payments directly through him. They went through the bank and went to him. They had a contract with the bank. I made the payments at the bank and they went directly to him. And I paid it off. I had a 10-year loan and I paid it off in like 3 years because I didn't have any commitments. I was single and I was making good money. So I'd go into the bank and I'd make double and triple payments and uh, but it's been work from there. And then I got into fixing up and I bought rentals and fixed them up, which I'm glad it was good, but I'm glad I'm rid of them, you know. And my wife is having trouble getting me to do something to the house because after working on an extreme fixer upper and having rentals, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to go out to the garage. I want to go out to the garage and tinker with my BMW or my car or something.
Well, how'd you meet your wife?
She worked at the local grain elevator, and I went in there one day and swept her off her feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All
And
right.
the initial date was on a motorcycle.
Oh, so she got on the motorcycle with you. Does she
She
still
did,
ride?
she did, but not anymore, you know.
I don't blame her. Um, so how long, how'd you propose, how'd you guys decide to get married?
Excuse me.
How'd you guys decide to get married? Did you propose, or?
Yeah, yeah. And we dated for, I don't know, I guess it was 9 months or so, and I was ready and she was ready, and the rest is history, I guess.
You gonna tell us how you proposed?
And then, well, yeah, we were at a restaurant in downtown Salina, and I said, we decided, yeah, let's get married. I said, do you want to get married? And she said, yeah. And she said her parents lived in Texas. They worked down the panhandle of Texas. I said, okay, you gonna call your parents? She says, well, no, I want to tell them in person. I said, well, if we go to Texas, I want to go on the motorcycle. She said, okay. So like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we took off and rode to Texas, and we got there to her parents' place like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we said, we're getting married. They said, oh, that's great. And we got up the next day and rode back.
Oh my goodness. So did they make it for well, how did she end up in Kansas then if her parents were in Texas?
Well, her parents originally lived in Nebraska, and they got
Okay.
job down in Texas. But uh, when she was in Nebraska, she got a job here at a grain elevator in Bavaria, Kansas, which is 7 miles from Brookville, and I met her there.
Okay. So it was love at first sight, it sounds like.
I guess so.
Well, I love it. And you guys have been married how long? How many years?
Oh, since about 1982.
Okay, so that's 42 years because I was born in 1982.
Really?
Maybe
How
43
long?
now, depending on what date.
How long have you been married?
We got married in 2011.
Oh,
Yeah, we actually had 3 weddings. We got married. First, my mother actually officiated our wedding, and then we had a big wedding in India, and then we had a big wedding here for our people to come to, a big like the Christian side of the family. But we actually had a lot of Indians there as well, so it was really a lot of fun. Um, so. So you're gonna go tinker with your motorcycle. Is there anything else that you want to tell me or people um or ask me anything at all?
no, I'm fine with what we've talked about. I hope we covered a lot of territory, didn't we?
We sure did. I really
Like I said,
appreciate it, Mr. Wolf.
I've never been on Zoom. Like I say, next time maybe I'll be a little better prepared, but I didn't know what to expect.
I think that this was perfect. It was absolutely perfect, and it shows who you are. That's exactly what I like, and hopefully this is something that you can take, and maybe your daughter will enjoy getting to watch it. Um, and
Can I
it could
give
be a
can I
keepsake for her.
can I give you a landscape shot of my small town?
Please do, yes.
Okay, here we go. This is where I live.
Oh wow.
It's a small town, dirt roads. Uh, you know, uh, sometimes city council meetings, some of the biggest complaints will be about the neighbors' dogs barking too loud, or small town politics.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love small towns, and I love that you get to tinker with your motorcycle and with your time off. And it looks like it's a pretty day over there, so you'll be able to enjoy that. Um, I do have one other question for you. You said you're gonna vote for me. Can I have your endorsement?
Sure.
All righty. Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf. I really appreciate it. Um,
Okay.
If you think of anything else anytime, let me know. I want to hear from people. If you see me, if you think I'm doing something the wrong way or I could do something better, please let me know about it.
Are,
And
are
if you
you
ever,
have you got like an office in Salina or something, or
I don't yet. We actually still need a campaign chair out that way. So if you're interested in that, we'd love to have you on the team.
okay?
Yeah. Are you interested?
Yeah, might be. Yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. Well, I'll put some of my team in touch with you as well.
Okay.
And we can get you if you'd like to just join our team meetings and kind of see where you want to fall in. And then if you change your mind, that's okay. But yeah, we'd absolutely love to have you with us. That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you so much, Mr. Wolf. Have a good day. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.